Hello, I'm Phil Root, and I'm an illustrator, comic book artist, and sometimes writer. Today, I'm going to be inking this guy. He's a character, a zombie character I've been working out for a new set of pages I got from Derek for Shepherd. And I was having fun designing him, so I thought I'd do a fully inked version as kind of like a small sketch piece. I am using better materials than typical sketch pieces, so I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's Black Star Matte India ink and a Princeton Velvet Touch round #1 watercolor brush. Additionally, I have some line work from Old Faithful, which is my Hunt 102 Crow Quill nib. And the paper is Canson Smooth Bristol, and the pencils I'm inking over were done with a Ticonderoga non-photo blue pencil. Quick side note here. I know I sound like I'm fishing for sponsorships when I talk about products that I use, but I also don't know if I've talked about this or not, but don't sleep on Canson Bristol. I know Strathmore is like the go-to for most people, but Canson is really, I think, quality consumer grade paper. It's not like artboard. What I mean by consumer grade is like it's working artist paper. It's not like the high-end, real thick artboard or, 200-pound paper or any of that kind of stuff. But I think it's second to none for the grade that it's in. And it doesn't get as much love as Strathmore, so I wanted to give it some love. It's typically a little bit cheaper, like when you break it down per sheet, than Strathmore. I also like, and I know this isn't for everybody, I feel like there is a little bit of tooth to the paper. There's a very slight texture, but it's not like watercolor paper. You can still like hold a line with it when you're inking on it. It keeps a line still pretty crisp. But I like the texture to the paper. It's not too smooth, you know what I mean? And on top of that, it's recycled. It's a recycled product, recycled paper, which I think is really cool. One more quick note I want to throw out there for my Southwest Florida locals. I will be at Lost World Books in Fort Myers, Florida on Saturday, December 7th. For their local Wonders Market. They hold a twice monthly market event with local vendors, arts, food trucks, secondhand clothes, just all kinds of really cool people. And it starts at 3 p.m. In addition to all of that, Lost World on its own is just an incredible bookstore and coffee shop. It's a very cool people hang out there and work there and own that place. There's a great vibe. It's an awesome hangout spot. Christy and I have gone there a couple times, like Friday nights after work. We'll go get tacos and go to Lost World and just hang out there and read, get some coffee. It's an awesome store. Check them out and come see me Saturday if you can, if you are in the Fort Myers, Florida area. Now that we've talked about independent store, let's talk about franchises. And I'm not talking about franchise stores. I'm talking about franchise movies. IP. IP is the big thing right now, right? That's what the kids are into. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having an old man moment there. That statement would be entirely true if by kids I meant studio executives, and by IP I meant low-risk investment, because studios don't want to take big swings on movies about characters that no one has heard of. We've been listening to YouTube, and podcasts, and people analyzing every single aspect of the entertainment world, going on and on and on about it. We've heard about how 30 years ago, the top box office movies were original properties, and now they're all sequels and adaptations. We've heard all that. I think it's all really interesting and really cool stuff, and it's really poignant, and I think it's really wild trends to watch and explain how we are where we are now. But we've heard all that. I don't need to reiterate what we've heard 1,000 times. I don't need to set that table again. What I want to talk about is how easy it is to forget about the beginnings of these things. I want to talk about these big bloated franchises and how easy it is to forget what we love about them in the first place, the very basic structure of them. And yes, I'm using the term bloated because so many of the big franchises, let's just say what we're all thinking. It's Star Wars. It's the MCU. It's bloated. They're enormous to the point where some of them aren't even telling stories anymore. They're simply releasing movies and TV series just to fill in holes in the story that online fandoms are complaining about. They give backstory that more often than not is unnecessary. There are full installments dedicated to world building that no one ever dreamed of, mostly because these are details that were never the point of what the original story was. Clone Wars, I'm looking at you. I'm not trying to shit all over these things. I know I just called out Clone Wars. I know there are legions of Star Wars fans out there that love the Clone Wars. And that's what I'm getting at here. There are plenty of people who love these things, love these aspects of these franchises. There are people who are coming to these fully fleshed out, fully formed franchises as children now. And they're not people like us who were there like at the beginning and have kind of seen it grow into something enormous. They're coming from a different angle, and then there are people who have seen it grow along the way who love that. I get that. I'm not trying to stand in the way of that when I complain about these things like I'm doing now, and like I will continue to do moving forward in this video. The thing I want to stress for each of these franchises is this. If you are a fan, I want to urge you to go back to the beginning. I'm not saying go back to the beginning and work your way through the entirety of the whole franchise. I mean, go revisit where it started, because that's where you can see, more often than not, what the franchise is all about. Or at least what the mission statement was when it started. Often in these bloated franchises, that's all been lost, just in terms of sort of cash grabbing your way to something bigger. But back at the beginning of them, everything you need is right there. Go back and watch the original Jurassic Park. I did that a couple years ago, and it was one of those things where I had sort of forgotten in this sequel machine that franchise has become, that the very first movie is a masterpiece. It's not a masterpiece just because it's a special effects juggernaut, or because it blew our minds when we saw it in theaters back in '93, or because dinosaurs are awesome. It's a masterpiece because in addition to being grade A, action-adventure storytelling and entertainment, it's also telling a thematic story about the hubris of science as a business. It's telling a story about what happens when the goal of your science is monetary. It's a movie about something more than just the events of the plot. Then, as is often the case, they repeated essentially the same thing for the second movie, and they watered down the theme. Then they made a third movie that had no theme at all. Then they basically remade the first movie, where they had to regress everyone to not learning anything from the first three movies and keep repeating it until it's laughable. And that's my point. These movies get franchised to the degree where we are literally groaning and laughing at them when another sequel is announced. No one's really asking for more of these movies. And the most we hope for is that they capture what the first one did, only better. But in a case like this, that's not going to happen because most of the time the first one did it perfectly already, which is why we wanted more of it in the first place. Star Wars will never be as simple, straightforward, and as perfect as it was in the original trilogy. Before they started building on all the big world building, and we had to learn what Mandalorians were, and we had to see what the Clone Wars were, instead of just letting the existence of these things just sort of live in our heads as this sort of, what is this world? kind of thing. The MCU will never capture exactly what it's like to reinvent oneself into a hero the way they did in the original Iron Man, where he literally builds himself a new persona, builds it from scratch. We see that process. It's also taking great care with the character in a way that I don't think that franchise does at all in later installments. All of these franchises are things I don't watch anymore because the movies just stopped being entertaining to me and started feeling more like homework. The best thing I've done for myself in the last couple of years is what I said with Jurassic Park, is to go back to the beginning of these properties and remember why I liked them in the first place. And then, more often than not, I stay there. I just stay there. I like the first Jurassic Park so much, and I will go with The Lost World and say I think that people dunk on that movie more than it deserves. It's not really about anything, but it's an entertaining ride. It's still Spielberg doing a Spielberg thing, even if it's a little empty. Star Wars, I don't really go past the first trilogy as far as the stuff that I really care about. Everything that's come after that has fallen way, way short for me. Maybe the Tartakovsky Clone Wars and maybe the first season of Mandalorian. There's exceptions here and there, but nothing really gets to the heart of what I love about Star Wars, like the first 3 movies, and of course the holiday special. Happy Life Day to all who celebrate. And then the MCU, yeah, like the kind of the Phase 1 stuff was great, and then it's sort of diminishing returns after that, to the point where after Endgame, I did take that as my Endgame, and I just stopped watching those movies. Watch what you like. As much of it can be in your own personal headcanon as you like. I'm not trying to stand in the way of that. My point is this: the heart of what you love about these properties is more often than not in the very first installment or two. And if you want to remember that in the purest way possible, go back and check those out. That's going to do it for me this time. Please subscribe to my channel if you're not already. You'll never miss a video that way. And go to philrootart.com and see what I've got going on over there. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves.